Okay, let's make some sandwich bread. First off, you need to add the active yeast to your milk and the water. Don't forget the sugar. So stir that in, and you need to let that sit for about 5 minutes or until the liquid looks frothy, kind of like beer. That's when you know that the yeast has been properly activated and it's ready to be added to the flour. Okay, so once the yeast has been properly activated, just add it to the flour and let that sit for about 15 minutes before you go ahead and add the salt to it. Now tip the dough onto the kitchen counter or whichever surface it is that you're working on and knead it for about 5 to 7 minutes. The whole point is to get the gluten going, and it is much easier to do this now compared to when you add the butter, which is going to make the dough quite wet and not as easy to work with. So I probably should have said this in the beginning. If you have a stand mixer, then by all means use that. I decided to use my hands for this video um, just to show you that you don't need a stand mixer to make bread um, that requires a wet dough. So knead it for about 5 to 7 minutes and then add in the butter. So this is kind of the fun part. I mean, at least for me it is, because I like the squidginess of it and the messiness. So just go ahead and have fun with it. And once the butter has been mixed in, now we need to knead the dough for about 7 minutes. It might take a bit longer, it might take a shorter time because the dough needs to pass the window test, which I'll show you later on. But yeah, it's wet dough. You might get tempted to add some flour, but just try and avoid it. Okay, I'll rephrase that. No more than 2 tablespoons of flour throughout the whole process. I know not everyone is going to be a fan of kneading a wet dough. It is messy and can get a little bit frustrating, but it can also be just so much fun. So, what I do is I use the smack and burr method, which is pretty much just smacking that dough onto the kitchen counter and pretending I'm a dog burrowing in the sand or the soil, whatever is in your mind. Just burrowing, looking for bones or whatever it is that dogs look for. I don't know really. But anyway, so just keep going at this. The whole point is to stretch the dough and get that gluten formation going. And in no time, it's going to be super stretchy, as you can see right now. So now the dough is a little bit less sticky, but it's smooth and has a good gluten formation. And we'll proceed to do the window test. So make sure your hands are a little bit wet and cut off a bit of a dough. Just toss it between your hands just to get it a little bit wet. And then you need to stretch it as much as you can using your fingertips. The whole point is to make sure that the dough does not just easily, you know, break apart, but that you can stretch it quite a bit and it forms something that looks a bit like a thin membrane that you can almost see the light through. That's when you know your dough has passed the window test. Tip the dough into a lightly oiled bowl, cover with cling film and a kitchen towel, and store that in the oven with the lights on or just someplace warm until it's risen and doubled in size. Once the dough has risen until doubled in size, give it a good punch in the middle and knead for about 30 seconds to knock out a bit of the air and then shape. Okay, some people might agree or disagree, but I think there's not just one way to um, shape the bread. So do whatever works for you. Just make sure that you burst any of the little bubbles that form at the very top and put the dough in a lightly oiled bread pan to rise for about an hour. Two ways to go about this once the bread has risen. You can lightly glaze it with an egg wash. That's just one egg with a dash of milk, or you can just bake it as it is. So at the time when the picture was taken, my bread was fresh out of the oven. So now it looks really wrinkly because, well, it's been resting. It's been resting for a while and it is super, super soft. I think you guys will really, really like this. I should have waited, but I was too impatient, so I cut into the bread. Oh, I just really wanted the bread. But anyway, it is so soft. If you want it to be a bit more firm, well, you can add a bit more flour, not too much. I will write the instructions on the blog, so just check it out. But if you happen to try the recipe, which I hope you do, I hope you enjoy it and let me know your thoughts. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Um, did you do something different? I'd like to know what you think. The recipe is on the blog. Have a lovely day. Thanks for stopping by.